Welcome to MSP Unplugged, episode number 34, Get New Clients. I'm your host, Jeff Halash. This is our live show where we discuss different ways to run your IT business, whether it's managed services, consulting, break fix, or anything in between. Let me introduce the co-host. We have Paul Green from MSP Marketing. Paul, how you doing?
Hi, very good, Jack. Thanks, Jeff. How about yourself?
I am doing excellent. I appreciate you joining us all the way from where are you at?
So I'm in the UK, in a little village right in the middle of the UK, and as you can probably tell, if you look outside the window, it's actually the early hours of Monday morning right now. It's midnight, and I'll show you what's got me through. So a nice can of Red Bull has got me through, and when I'm trying to get to sleep in an hour's time, I'll be inevitably lying wide awake thinking about this show and thinking, why did I drink Red Bull just before going to bed? But there we go.
There you go. Very good. Well, I'm glad you stayed up and were able to hang out with us this evening. So I appreciate that. All right. So let's go ahead and we're going to share a tip or story that we can learn from. And I guess I'm going to start off to this week and we're going to switch it up a little bit. Normally I throw it to the guests, but I'm going to throw mine out there. So one of the things I want to bring up is when you look at things like making a mistake, I don't believe in making mistakes. Okay. When you make a mistake, I look at it as a learning experience. And what I mean by that is that if you learn from whatever you've done that was not to your liking, i.e. a mistake, then it's something you've learned from and you're able to move on. I see a lot of people will get stuck in the way things were, how things used to be, things just not working out. And there's always going to be setbacks in life. Hey, you know what? Welcome to Life 101. Here's the thing to look forward to. If you wake up in the morning and you're able to breathe and you get out of your bed, you're doing good. So just have peace with that. And, look at those things as a positive thing. I think a lot of times we will delve into these negative feelings and negativity, and it will not only bring us down, but it also brings other people that are around us down too, i.e. your customers, family, etc. So don't look at things as mistakes are not mistakes. They're learning experiences. And no, I did not make that up. I read it somewhere and I have no idea where it was from. So I'll take credit for it right now. All right. Let me kick that over to Paul. And Paul, what do you have for us this week?
Well, before I give you mine, on the subject of making mistakes, I actually employ someone full time, and his job is to find things that don't work. So he's my marketing manager. His name is James, and because I do marketing all day long, I'm doing marketing with my clients and marketing for myself. He's almost like my R&D, my research and development guy. And I say to him, his job is to fail at more things every day than he succeeds at, because if he succeeds at something, it's almost like we've found something too quickly. Whereas if he fails at something and fails at it again and fails at it again and fails at it again, and we still keep going and he fails at it and fails at it and fails at it, then eventually we end up with something better and something that we would never have got to if we hadn't been through those failures. So I completely agree with you that it is a learning experience. And actually, if you can embrace that learning experience and almost look forward to the failures, you find yourself going off in directions that you would never, ever have gone before. Now, in terms of what I'd like to throw in, I'm going to throw a challenge to everyone that's watching this, which is because we're going to be talking about marketing for the next hour or so. And marketing is a real passion for me. And I work only with MSPs and IT support companies talking about their marketing and helping them with their marketing. If you are in that position where you think, oh God, my marketing just isn't good enough, we're not doing enough, or we're not doing any, it's not very good, then you can take solace in the fact that you're like 95% of most owners of MSPs, because most people don't do enough marketing or it's very haphazard. So my thing to throw out is, if that's you, all you've got to do, you haven't got to dedicate your entire life to it, all you've got to do is find 60 minutes every single weekday to work on your marketing, which is just essentially 1 hour a week. And I've worked with so many people who haven't known where to start with their marketing. So I said, look, all you need to do to get started is find 60 minutes a day. Doesn't really matter when that 60 minutes is. It could be before work, it could be lunchtime, it could be in the evening. But if you can get into a habit of 60 minutes a day, suddenly that turns into 5 hours a week, which turns into 20 hours a month, which, you look at that, then that's 240 hours a year working on marketing. And the wonderful thing about marketing and MSP is you don't need to be perfect. You don't need to be brilliant. You don't need to have amazing marketing skills. You just need to be a little bit better than your competitors. And if you assume that 95% of your competitors aren't doing any marketing either, you can see that actually just the fact that you're doing 240 hours a year of marketing just gives you an edge. And so that would be my takeaway. And that's something that you could start that really easily tomorrow.
I like that. Yes. Start small, and that, a little bit goes a long way.
It does. It really does.
1 hour is better than 0, right? Any day of the week.
Exactly.
I like that. And it adds up over time. And I think a lot of people will lose sight of that sometimes, where they'll look at, well, it's not really making much of a difference. But like you said, if you do anything like that for a year, you will see a night and day difference in your business. I don't care what your business is. I guarantee it. And I don't say that often, but I'm just telling you, anytime that you put any type of effort into what you're doing, it will change the landscape of what you do. Mm-hmm. All right. So let's go ahead and let's get a little bit of background story on you, Paul, and where'd you come from? And how did you get into marketing and even just marketing to MSPs?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you. So my adult career started when I was 19. I was a newspaper reporter, which was awesome. This was back in the mid-90s when it was just newspapers, when there were no websites. And I worked for one of those traditional tiny little market town weekly newspapers where, we did no work for half the week. And then we'd sort of write the newspaper really frantically in the other half of the week. And that was great. And then from there, I moved into radio, and I spent 10 very happy years in radio. I was a radio presenter. I did the news. I ended up running the stations, and that was amazing fun. And then, like a lot of things, when you do something full time and it's your passion for a long time, eventually that passion just runs out. And in 2005, I had what's known as an entrepreneurial seizure. And anyone that's read the book, The E-Myth Revisited by Michael Gerber, and if you haven't read that book, get on Amazon right now. The E-Myth, E-Myth Revisited, E being entrepreneurial, the entrepreneurial myth revisited. Michael Gerber in that book talks about having an entrepreneurial seizure, where you suddenly think, I should run my own business. And virtually everyone who owns their own business today has had some form of that. And we all know, of course, once you've had that thought, you've got to act on it. You have to seize it and do something with it. So I had my entrepreneurial seizure in 2005, and I started initially a public relations business, which kind of over a period of time turned into a general marketing business. And then around about 2010, my daughter was born. She's 10 now, and she was actually born really early. She was born at 25 weeks, which is about as premature as you can get and survive. And thank goodness right now she's healthy. She doesn't have any medical issues at all. But back then, it was one of those things of literally with an hour's notice, the baby, which was not due for another 15 weeks, just suddenly arrived. And at that point, I was working 60-hour weeks. I had 3 staff, but it was really all about me. And, that it wasn't really a business. I didn't have a business. I had a badly paid job working for a maniac. And I was the maniac that I was working for. And there was a 3-month process where my wife and I were going and spending, all day in the hospital every day. And it was a real, it's funny how you look back at life's tragedies, life's bad things that I'll put bad things in inverted commas, bad things that have happened to you. And actually that was a massive turning point for me in my business and my personal life, because I realized, how old would I have been? I'd have been about 36 at the time. And I realized that this is not sustainable. I can't keep doing 60-hour weeks and having a business that I'm worrying about when I'm trying to sit in a hospital and comfort my wife and all of that kind of stuff. And as a direct result of that, we made some big decisions about the business. We fired some clients. We decided to pivot to a different model. I discovered monthly recurring revenue, which, it's only 10 years ago, but that was a major revelation for me. And we also discovered the power of niching. And I moved the business to work only with healthcare sectors. So we were working with opticians, veterinarians, and dentists. And there was a lot of other things that we changed. But from that point, over the next 4 years, the business just exploded. It went absolutely mad. And it grew and grew and grew. And we took on more staff. And it's funny that the less that I did personally in the business, the faster the business grew and the more robust it was. And it got to a point in 2015, so 5 years on from there, where we were doing £1 million a year, which I'm not quite sure where that is with the exchange rate into dollars, but it's a fair sum of money. It's a lot of money. It's we had 15 staff, and I got to a point where I went off on a 3-week cruise. We went, I think it was a cold cruise. So we went around sort of Europe, 3 weeks. I didn't take a single phone call. I didn't look at a single email. I did not. I was so bored, Jeff. You wouldn't believe how bored you can be on a cruise ship for 3 weeks. But I kind of came off the back of that. And as we got into the port, I rang my operations manager and said, "Is there anything we need to talk about?" And she said, "No." She said, "We didn't miss you at all." And that and a number of other things happened and made me realize this business is finished. The business operates without me. It churns out an amazing net profit. This is a great business, but I'm bored. I've got nothing to do. So I put the business up for sale. So I sold that business in 2016. It took a year to sell it. We had a great sale and made some money out of that. And I walked away. And the reason I'm working with MSPs is I took 6 months off. And I highly recommend for everyone, when you sell your business, and you should certainly something you should be thinking about, because you're going to leave that business at some point. Either they'll be carrying you out of your business in a box, or someone will be nailing a sign to the door saying foreclosed, or you're going to sell the business. And it's certainly something I wish I'd planned a little bit more than just that year. But I took 6 months off, and again, I got bored. And people like us can't do nothing for 6 months. And the signs should have been there really when I was doing nothing for 3 weeks, and that was terrible. So after 6 months, I started a new business. And I had a non-compete in place, so I couldn't work with those sectors I knew. So I kind of thought back to what some of the clients I used to have worked with. And I had a whole series of IT clients along the years. And I've always enjoyed IT. I'm not a technician. And which, by the way, I think is one of my strengths, because I don't get caught up in all of the minutiae of techs and which PSA should we have and which is the best technology stack for this and all of that kind of stuff. But I love talking about IT. I love my gadgets. I love technology. I love the internet. And so I sort of dipped my toe into that water. And that was 2016. And 4 years on now, I'm working with around about 300 MSPs around the world. And I love it. I absolutely adore this. I've never known a world like our world. And, where you've got businesses, there's so many businesses, and yet there's so much friendliness. You can have direct competitors opposite each other in the same city. On day one, on a Monday, they're competing for the same client, and on Tuesday, they're collaborating to help each other out. And that doesn't happen elsewhere. I love that. I've never known a world with so much monthly recurring revenue. I've never known a world where everything changes so often. Just in the 4 years I've been working with MSPs, things have changed. Look what's happened in the last 6 months. The work from home revolution is happening. It's happening now, and the MSPs are the big winners in this, because it was a lot of stress in March and April, but right now we're seeing huge amounts of project work starting to come out as businesses are really properly putting in place proper solutions. So anyone can work anywhere on any device at any time. And, we all know that it's going to change again. We've got MSSP, Managed Security Services Provider. That's the next iteration over the next few years. And I think this is just such a wonderful market to work in. Now, what's interesting is the reason I think that 95% of MSPs don't do marketing and aren't very good at marketing is because of all these positive things. Because there's so much change, because there's so much demand, there's so much need and want for what you do. And because there's so much monthly recurring revenue, and because you also keep clients for so long, I've never known a world where people keep their, you meet an MSP who's been going for 20 years and they've still got client number 1 or client number 2. That doesn't happen elsewhere. And I think all of these things together, this is what actually enables you to run a really successful MSP. that chucks out net profit, and you can do that without being good at marketing. And there are very, very few other businesses out there where you can chuck out good net profit and make a really solid living without being good at marketing. In most other businesses, you have to be good at marketing. So this is why I enjoy doing what I do, because I get to help people who are actually quite successful at what they do, but I get to help them just get a little bit better at their marketing, which has a stratospheric effect on their ability to win new clients.
Wow, that's a great origin story and a great beginning to this this talk. So when we're looking at growing your business, marketing your MSP, IT support company, if you obviously in the beginning you said, hey, spend an hour a day, obviously 5 days a week, and work on your marketing. Set that time aside. Where would people get started? Because I think what happens when marketing is this humongous term that nobody knows exactly where to start or where to go or what to do. So what do they start with?
That is the $1 million question. And I have an answer. Now, the easy answer is you do stuff which pays off. You do stuff which pays off for you in the long term at the expense of the short term stuff. Now, I give that with the caveat, which is if you're in a startup mode or you're desperate or you just need more cash, then obviously you do things that generate more cash. But it's easier to generate more cash and more revenue from your existing clients than it is from getting new clients. So let me give you the long term answer. And I'm going to give you the strategic answer first, and then we'll jump into tactical stuff. So I teach a 3-step system or a 3-step strategy for long-term marketing. And I think for most MSPs, short-term marketing can be quite expensive. Jeff, you and I were talking about Google Ads just before the show started, and how you can spend an absolute fortune on Google Ads, but it does give you a flow of leads. Now, the quality of the leads can be debated. I much prefer, when I'm talking with MSPs, is putting in place long-term marketing strategies, because the sales cycle is so long, because people only buy when they're ready to buy. And, you could be talking to someone today, but for whatever reason, they're just not ready. How many times has everybody who's watching this show right now, how many times have you had a prospect that you've spent some time with, you've put together a proposal, they like you, they like the proposal, they like the price, they don't like their incumbent MSP, this is your business to win, and then they ring you up 3 weeks down the line and say, actually, we've just signed a new contract with the guys that we don't like. It's happened to every MSP that I know, and the reason is because they just weren't ready to switch. We call that, in fact, inertia loyalty, where the perceived pain of switching to a new supplier is a lot higher than the perceived benefits are. So you've got all of these, and that client's going to leave their incumbent at some point, but it might be next year or the year after. So you really have to take a long-term marketing view with MSPs. So this is the 3-step strategy that I recommend. I'll tell you the strategy, and then we'll go back and sort of go over each one. So number 1 is you need to build audiences. And these are bunches of people who are willing to listen to you. We'll come back to that in a second. Step number 2 is you need to build a relationship with those audiences so that they get to know you in some way. And then step number 3 is you've got to commercialize those audiences. Now, if we go right back up to the top, build audiences or build multiple audiences. So what is an audience? An audience can be as simple as the people connected to you on LinkedIn. In fact, that's your number 1 audience, is your LinkedIn connections. And what we can do, Jeff, we can go into varying levels of detail about specifically how you build that, and perhaps we'll come on to that later on in the show. But LinkedIn would be one of your audiences. Your email list would also be another one of your audiences. In fact, for most MSPs, those are your 2 primary audiences. Just to give you an idea of my audiences, because the marketing that I do in my business is exactly the same marketing that I would do if I owned an MSP. It's absolutely identical. So I have 4 or 5 audiences. I've got my email list. So I have I think it's either just under or just over 2,000 MSPs who've chosen to give me their email address. And in fact, they've done it to get a free copy of my book, and I can email them, and I do email them twice a week. I've got a Facebook group with 1,000 or just under 1,000 MSPs in there. It's a vendor-free zone. And that Facebook group, again, it's another audience. So it's another bunch of people who are listening to me. And I've got my LinkedIn connections. I've got about 4,000 LinkedIn connections. It's another audience. I do a podcast as well. We've had something like 11,000 downloads of that podcast since we launched it back end of last year. It's another audience. And there is another one in the back of my head. I can't think what that is. So we'll just stick with those audiences. But we've got there, you can see 4 separate audiences. And there'll be some people who some people who get my emails and they're in the Facebook group and they're connected to me on LinkedIn and they listen to the podcast. But most people will only be in 1 or 2 of those. So if I ran an MSP, LinkedIn would be my main audience. My email list would be my second audience. Now, your email list is actually your most important one because all the other audiences are built on other people's platforms. So LinkedIn is a Microsoft platform. Facebook, Instagram, all of those others are built on Facebook's platforms, and they can take those platforms away from you, or they can change the rules. Whereas your email list, even if you fall out with your email, your CRM, like your MailChimp or your Infusionsoft or ActiveCampaign, you still own the data. Even if they ban you from their platform, it's your data. So your email list should be your most important one, although it is hard to get people's email addresses and get them to opt in. So if I ran an MSP, I'd be doing LinkedIn. I would have my email address. I might have a Facebook group if I had a niche. So Facebook groups work really well, but they're very hard work. And if let's say I had a niche, a niche, I was only working with CPAs or lawyers. And I could do, a technology group for lawyers in so-and-so state. And that would be a great Facebook group. And I might get, in fact, you wouldn't get lawyers in a Facebook group, but you might get CPAs, say. And, I might get 300 or 400 people joining that group. And that's 300 or 400 prospects. That's exactly the people that I want to reach. So that would be a perfect group. I might do a podcast, or I might do a YouTube channel. Or something like that. Again, that works. It's so much easier if you have a niche. In fact, you'll have noticed already, I've talked 2 or 3 times about having a niche. It's one of the top marketing secrets is to have a niche. It's everyone's general clients, but it's so much cheaper and so much easier to go and find people when they fit within a certain niche. And, there's often niches can be absolutely massive. You take something like CPAs, where you go a 50-mile radius, how many CPAs have you got? There are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of them. So even small niches can be quite profitable. So step number 1 was building audiences. Definitely want your LinkedIn. You definitely want your email. You might do Facebook. You might do Twitter if you're a fan of Twitter. You might do Instagram. I say if you're a fan of Twitter. I know it's a very black and white thing, isn't it? Twitter.
Yeah, it's Twitter. Twitter is Twitter still relevant?
I am not a Twitter person, so I'm the wrong person to ask. But, and the only time I ever see the word Twitter in the news is when it's got Donald Trump's name attached to it.
Right.
So, but Twitter is still a platform. It's a platform with a lot of users. I think if you're not into Twitter, don't even bother. But if you are a Twit fan, I don't know what the language would be for it. If you're passionate about Twitter, absolutely use Twitter. I tell you the one that I do get asked about a lot is Instagram. Should you use Instagram? Now, you would only use Instagram if the businesses that you want to reach are on Instagram. So you'd use it if you want residential business. And I know some of the viewers are after residential business because, of course, Instagram is a consumer platform. But you would only use it for B2B if you were after, let's say, shops, retail, restaurants, hospitality, hotels, because they all use Instagram for their own marketing. So you only use Instagram if the businesses you want are using Instagram for the marketing. And that's because the decision makers are typically the ones that are on Instagram using the marketing. But all of these are potential audiences. I have various clients who have other platforms that they use. I've got one guy who in the UK who works with veterinarians, and I'm pretty sure he's found a platform where the veterinary community in the UK goes and hangs out, and that's a very powerful platform for him. So there's always, you kind of look to see where are my audiences and where can I go and build an audience. So that was step 1. Step 2 was build a relationship with those people. So the reason we want to gather these people together into an audience is so we can get them to know us. So I said that people only buy when they're ready to buy. I also talked about inertia loyalty. And there's a huge amount of fear amongst ordinary business owners and managers about technology. And if you think about your existing clients, how much do they really know about technology? Very, very little. Very, very, very little. They know, they've heard about the cloud, and they know that it's something to do with using their cell phone, and that they can just log on anywhere and all of this kind of stuff. But they don't really understand technology at the level we understand it, or certainly you understand it. I'm not a tech. I'm just slightly above their knowledge level. I've learned so much in the last few years about things like encryption, about cybersecurity, about MFA, and all of these kind of things. And it's taken me 4 years to learn this stuff. Your average client, they just don't know. And in fact, to a certain extent, when they hire you, one of the reasons they hire you is so they don't have to think about this kind of stuff. So for that reason, when the average business owner or manager picks a new MSP, they are not picking that MSP with their brain. So your average decision maker it is impossible for them to make a cognitive decision about, should I pick this MSP or should I pick this MSP? They cannot tell them apart because they don't have the cognitive abilities to do this. Now, the only people who can do that are internal IT managers. So if you're trying to sell a support service to an internal IT manager, that person can make a cognitive decision. These guys know their stuff. I'm going to go with them because they've got the same knowledge as you. But the average owner or manager does not have the knowledge that you have. They do not know what you know, and they're not interested. So therefore, their brain can't make a decision. So the decision gets delegated down to their heart, to their emotions. And this is a sad reflection of how little people know about technology. But they pick you, or they don't pick you, based on whether or not they like you. And the businesses that go out and sell more and get more new clients are simply better at building relationships with these people. In fact, you could be really awful at the tech support. I mean, you wouldn't keep the clients for the 10, 20 years, but you could be, technically a pretty bad firm. But if you were really good at the marketing and you were really good at building relationships with people, you would win more new clients than your competitors. You wouldn't keep them, but you would win more new clients. And this is the goal. You've got to build a relationship so that someone's heart, someone's emotions makes them feel as though you are the safe choice. And this is why if you can build those audiences, people can get to know you over a period of time. So if they're reading your emails on a weekly basis, if they're seeing your posts on Facebook or Instagram or LinkedIn, it's a tiny relationship, but it is a relationship of sorts. And it takes away some of the emotional fear for people. So at that point that they're sick to death of their incumbent and they're ready to move on and switch and find a new MSP, in some tiny way in their heart, they feel as though they know you. And that actually gives you a dramatic advantage because it guarantees you a place at the table to have a conversation with them, and it makes you feel safer. And keyword there was feel. And if you feel safer, then they're much more likely to pick you. So the heart makes the buying decision and the brain rubber stamps that buying decision. And that's what we want to go with. This is why when I look at most MSPs' websites, I'm crying inside because most MSPs' websites are just full of brain fodder. They're very dry, they're very cold, they're full of stock images of network cables and server racks. They don't use emotive language because, of course, they've been written by techs, and techs tend not to talk in emotive language and use emotional marketing. The very best MSP websites have very little to do with technology. They talk about people. They show you pictures of people. They show faces. They talk about backstories, and they talk about not accreditations and qualifications and partnerships. They talk about case studies, and they talk about clients, and they have clients talking about how wonderful it's been working with these people and how they can't do. And they talk about everything but the technology. The technology is irrelevant to the sales process. It's relevant at the point where you say, well, this is what we do, this is the stack we do, blah 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 blah. But actually, it's the relationship and it's the emotional stuff that sells it. So how do you actually practically do this? It's all about content. It's all about content marketing. I'm going to recommend a book to you. This is one of the best books I've ever read about content marketing, and it's written so ordinary people can understand it. It's called They Ask, You Answer by Marcus Sheridan. They Ask, You Answer by Marcus Sheridan. and just get on Amazon now, get that. I think there's an Audible version as well, an audiobook version. What makes this good is that Marcus Sheridan is an ordinary business owner who, back in the last recession, the 2007 recession, he was running a swimming pool company, and they were using Google Ads, a lot of Google Ads, to drive leads into that company. And ultimately, it was costing them more to acquire a client than the profitability allowed. And they completely switched their marketing strategy to being one of content marketing. And they sat down and said, well, look, we only sell one type of pool. Like, I forget what type now. I think they only sold the fiberglass, and they didn't sell concrete pools, for example. And they said, well, look, rather than us trying to talk people into having a fiberglass pool, why don't we write a really good article about the difference between fiberglass and concrete pools? And this article turned into a 10,000 word article, and they put it on their website. And within a week, if you typed in what's the difference between fiberglass and concrete pools anywhere in the world, their website was at the top. And they started getting leads coming in from all over the country, all over the States, for these fiberglass pools to go and install them. And they kind of realized, hang on, we're onto something here. And then they basically took that as their content marketing initiative. Now, I won't tell you the rest of it because it's all explained in the book. And actually now Marcus Sheridan runs a marketing agency helping people implement exactly that. But if you read that and you look at it and say, right, what are the things that our customers, that our prospects want to know that we don't talk about on our website? Pricing, for example. Pricing, I always traditionally said you should never put pricing on your website. But then I read that book and my position on it completely changed, because I realized it's the number one question that a prospect has got is, how much is it going to cost me? Well, you and I, Jeff, we know that the answer is, well, it depends what you want. Right. There is no price for IT, because everyone wants different things of, different bundles and whatsoever. But you can still turn that into an article. In fact, you should have a 2 to 3 to 4 to 5,000 word article on your website talking about price and how much things cost, and looking at the different costs of things and whatsoever. And there's loads of examples in the book to do that. So the way to build relationships is through content marketing, sending out weekly emails, posting daily on social media, really long form content on your website. If you can't personally do this, and the vast majority of MSPs are not writers, they don't like writing, they don't enjoy it, then what I recommend you do is you get someone else to do it for you. And I'm a big fan of when there's a job that needs to be done in the business and it's important, and this marketing stuff we're talking about is important, and if you don't enjoy it, just get someone else to do it for you. In fact, there's an acronym that I try and live my life by, and I recommend the same to the MSPs I work with. And the acronym is DOA. Now, Jeff, if you were watching a crime show and you saw someone DOA, what would you think that stood for?
Dead on arrival.
Exactly. And that's what we'll be as business owners if we try and do everything ourselves. So instead, let's rename that acronym to delegate, outsource, automate. Delegate, outsource, automate. So if you've got a job, put it this way, there's a very small number of things that only you in the business really, really need to do. And even if you're a one-man band or a two-man band, there's still only a small number of jobs in the business that you personally need to do. Everything else should either be delegated if you've got staff to delegate to, or outsourced, and I'll talk about some platforms in a second, or automated. And I know, the wonderful thing about the PSAs and the state of software right now is if you've got APIs, you can automate it with Zapier and all of these other tools that will sit in the middle. And we're at a golden age for software, collaborating and talking to other software. I mentioned platforms for outsourcing. There's 3 platforms to have a look at. You've got Upwork. Upwork.com is a great platform to go and find people around the world that will do jobs for you. You've got Fiverr.com, Fiverr with 2 R's, and you've also got peopleperhour.com. Now, these are 3 platforms that all do essentially the same thing. They find people who will do stuff, and they sit in the middle between you and that person. So they just make buying services safe. So I'll give you an example, because I have dozens and dozens of outsourced people who do stuff for me. I have a guy I think he's in Singapore, or it might be the Philippines, or Vietnam. I can't remember where he is. He's somewhere, and he converts documents for me. We give him an InDesign file, and he turns it into Microsoft Publisher file. So he takes a nice, elegant, beautiful thing and turns it into something ugly, which some of our clients prefer it in Publisher format. And it costs me, let's say $6 for him to do a file, which for me, $6 is what? It's a coffee, yeah. It's not a huge amount of money. It would take me half an hour to do it. So I'm spending $6 to buy back half an hour of my time. For him, wherever he's based, $6 has the spending power of $30, the equivalent of $30 because of the exchange rate and the cost of living wherever he is. So he's making a great living selling his services on this platform. I don't know where he is. I don't know who he is. I'm protected because I pay my money to the platform, and the platform only releases my money when I've agreed that he's done the work. And he's protected because I have to pay my money into the platform so he can see that the money is there so long as he's done the work. And Fiverr and Upwork and People Per Hour, they all work in exactly the same way. And I think, when we're talking about writing, there are thousands of writers out there. Now, writing is one of the few things that you need to get done by someone in your country. So I'm in the UK. I only ever hire UK writers on the platforms I use. If I was in the States, I'd hire stateside writers who are native English speakers as well, because writing is one of those things that you don't want a non-English speaker based outside of your country writing for you. That's very much something you want done, in your own country. However, there are still thousands of writers out there. And my recommendation for finding great writers is you put together a little brief of a writing job that you want to be done, and you give exactly the same brief, identical brief, to 3 or 4 or 5 separate writers. And then you can compare the work that they send back. And whenever I need a new writer, that's exactly what I do. I give the same job to 5 people. Then I look at the 5 pieces of work and I'm like, right, that's crap. That's crap. This is really good with a bit of tweaking. And, this is the guy I'm going to go to, because I can then compare the work from those different writers. The other thing that we do, just while we're talking about outsourcing, is I also have a couple of virtual assistants. So I use a company in the UK that finds virtual assistants for me, which costs me a little bit more, but it means I don't have, if I don't click with a virtual assistant, I don't have to fire them. I just get, the agency does that for me. But again, there are hundreds, if not thousands, of virtual assistants out there. And you look at anything within your marketing or even just running the business, right down to, we have a first, second, third line support for our clients. I'm the third line support, so I want to do as little of that as possible. I want to do more interesting stuff. Our first line support is a virtual assistant. And, we hired a virtual assistant to do that because it's, as with any first line, it's a completely systemizable job. Because all she needs to know is this is the 80% of stuff that you can answer. Here are the stock replies. Here's how you do that. This is the 20% of stuff you can't do, and you escalate it up to the second or third line, and that's it. And that costs us, maybe $15, $20 an hour for the time that she's working, which is so much cheaper than having an actual employee sitting and doing it. So I think in your mindset, in that DOA mindset, not just with marketing, but with all of it, you can look at it and say, right, how can I get someone else to do this for me so I don't have to? So I know I've been talking a lot, but I'm nearly there. So we've got the strategy, we've got build the audiences, we've then got build the relationship with them. Now, this is all very nice, and this is lots of activity, but ultimately doesn't make you any money. This just builds you a bunch of people to go and get money from, but we want to get the money. And the money is the bottom one, is the third step, which is the commercializing it. Now, this is where you need to get into hard marketing and do some proper marketing. And the easiest way to do this is to run what I call sort of mini campaigns. And the campaigns are where you'll typically have a number of different touch points to hit someone with a commercial message. So right now, in September 2020, the best commercial message is if you felt unhappy with your IT support during the lockdown or during the last 6 months, now is the time to do something about it. And the reason that that's a great message for a campaign right now is I truly believe, and I'm not the only one in this, with this belief, I've discussed this with loads of marketing people across the world, both in our world and outside of our world. And we all pretty much agree that, the whole rush to work from home in March There are a whole bunch of people. You did a great job. You looked after your clients. You got them working from home quickly. You got them sorted out. You serviced them well. For every MSP that did a good job of that, there's an MSP that did a really ropey job. And I've heard some horrendous stories, as I'm sure you have, of people that were essentially abandoned because their IT support company just couldn't cope. And actually, the bigger companies tended to be the worst offenders. The bigger companies supporting thousands of users really struggled to deliver high levels of service back in March. A whole bunch of clients made decisions in their minds and in their hearts back in March and April and May to move on and find a different IT support company, but they haven't taken action on it yet. And it's now, regardless of what's sort of happening with COVID and lockdowns, and I know that, obviously the States is having a worse time of it than anywhere else in the world right now. But people are starting now to take action on those decisions. So they've spent 6 months not wanting to be with their IT, with their MSP, and now they're starting to take action. So what would be great now is for you to run a campaign with that message. If you're not happy, or if you were unhappy with the way you were looked after during the lockdown, now's the time to switch and to look at another MSP. And here's how the multi-touch point campaign would work. So imagine you've got this prospect. Let's call him David. David goes into his office one Monday morning, and there's a postcard. And a postcard is a physical postcard that's been sent to him, and it's got that message on. If you're unhappy with your MSP or with your IT support company, it's time to switch. And he'll kind of look at that and think, well, that's interesting, put it down. And he'll never pick that up again now. He'll just put that down. And then later on in the day, David gets an email. And the email's from you. And the email says, oh, hi, David. I sent you a postcard today, just checking that you got it. If you're unhappy with your blah, 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 we need to have a talk. And the email has a link to your website where your live calendar is there, using Microsoft Bookings, which is part of 365, or Calendly, both of which allow you to put your live calendar on the website, which I highly recommend that you do. And it was the same call to action. It was exactly the same thing on the postcard. But the reason you send them an email is because when he's got a physical postcard, he's got to type something in. On an email, he's just got to click a link. So the postcard is making it more likely that he's actually going to click the link in the email. So let's say David clicks through, he has a look, and he doesn't book it right now. But then tomorrow, he's on Facebook, and there's an advert. And the advert is talking to him, and it's saying, don't forget to book your 15-minute no obligation conversation to talk about switching IT support companies. And you can target David and all the other people in Facebook with something called a custom audience. So a custom audience is where you upload a load of data to Facebook and you say, right, Facebook, if you can match these cell phone numbers or these email addresses, these are the people we want to target. So if you can match them, please show them this advert. And that's a very, very cost-effective way of doing it. The other thing you can do in Facebook is something called remarketing. So you can say, look, if anyone's visited this specific page or indeed any page of my website, please show them this advert. What would happen next? Oh, that's the next thing is then you'd send David would get a message from you on LinkedIn because you're connected to him on LinkedIn. He might see one of your posts on LinkedIn, but he might also get a message from you. And then the fifth touch point is, and this is the one that actually gets you the money 9 times out of 10, is David gets a phone call. Now, you personally might not be the one that phones him, but someone on your behalf just phones him to say, hi, David, I'm calling from so-and-so's office. Listen, we sent you this postcard and an email, blah, 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 blah. Shall I get you booked in for that 15-minute call? And that phone call might get 1 in 10 or 1 in 15 people actually saying, yeah, go on, let's have that conversation. Now, we call this a multi-touch point campaign. And think about that from David's point of view. We had a postcard, we had an email, we had a LinkedIn message, we had a Facebook advert, and we had a phone call. 5 things. Same message delivered in 5 different ways across 5 different platforms. Is that too much? No. It's not too much at all. That's an effective and an efficient marketing campaign. Now, you could do that to cold data tomorrow. What would make that really work well is when you're doing it to someone that you've already got a marketing relationship with. And that's why we've got those first 2 steps of building audiences and then building a relationship with those audiences before we try and commercialize it.
Wow. I think
I talked nonstop there for about 25 minutes.
There's so much to dissect out of that. I mean, it's a lot of great information. And I think let's go back a little bit. So when we're talking about adding content, because obviously these audiences are not necessarily people we're in contact with on a regular basis. Take LinkedIn, for example. LinkedIn, you have, I think you said you had 4,000 people you're linked up with. I get people all the time that, hey, hey, Jeff, good to meet you virtually, blah, 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 whatever. It's not really people I know. Now, if they have something to do with IT or, something in my realm, I'll go ahead and accept their friend request because you never know.
Yeah.
And I think where a lot of people get stuck is they don't really know because obviously you can't have real long form content on these services like LinkedIn, Facebook, and stuff like that because people are scrolling and they get bored easily and quickly. So what's something that they can put on there that's going to catch people's attention and at least be one of those touch points that people are going to pay attention to?
That's a great question. I think you have to you have to do something called I call edutainment, which is education and entertainment in one package. Because technology is boring to a lot of ordinary people. It is. We find it fascinating, but it's boring to them.
It is
so
boring.
I think it is boring, and we know that cybersecurity is actually genuinely terrifying because certainly you see it, you actually see what's happened. But again, to most people, it's like being burglarized. They think they're never going to be burgled. And until it happens to someone near them. So I think the kind of content, there's no real, I haven't got a real this is the kind of post and this gets their attention whatsoever. I think what you actually have to do is make a commitment to just putting stuff on and educating and teaching them, but doing it in the most interesting way possible. Words like cybersecurity are turn-offs, but you can talk about being safe, and you can do little stories like, what happens if David comes into work tomorrow morning and he's left his laptop on a train. Is it a stress of, oh my God, what was on there? Did you have a password on there? Blah, 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 blah. Is it that stress, or is it a case of, oh, that's annoying, isn't it? But we know it can be wiped remotely. We know it's encrypted. We know it's blah, 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 blah. It's safe. It's a minor inconvenience rather than a major crisis. So I think you just have to, in using their language and using their frame of reference, you just have to keep teaching them about technology. The key thing to remember is that there's a once in a 10-year or once in a 5-year opportunity is the day they wake up and they're suddenly like, right, I'm going to take action today and go and talk to some other IT support companies. And all we're trying to do is being there in front of them. You right now, as we speak, let's take that 4,000 people I've got on LinkedIn, there might be 3 or 4 people within that 4,000 that would want to have a conversation with me right now. Now, I can't just keep putting something on LinkedIn that says, shall we talk, but I can keep teaching them and teaching them and teaching them. And all I've got to do is resonate with them once or twice at the right kind of time. And they're quite likely to at least have a conversation with me.
I love what you said there, because when you think about basically what you're saying is not only the education, entertainment portion, but even the storytelling. If you can tell a story about a situation, whether it be real or not, and get people engaged on that particular story, because that's great. Hey, if this happened to you, or not even that, hey, John left his laptop on the train, blah, 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 and this is what happened. And here's 2 different types of scenarios. And just leave it at that. It's real, it's kind of one of those things where people, because their interest is peaked at that point a little bit. And like you said, when they need your service, that's going to come to their mind because you're the one that taught them about it.
Yes.
And maybe they didn't know, so that's great. I think, and sometimes I think we get stuck in doing things, like you said. I've said this for years from the website standpoint. Yeah, IT people should not do their own websites. They suck at it. I'm just being honest. I'm one. A lot of times people don't want to put things like their picture up on their website because for whatever reason. And I'm like always, you know what? Just be a real person. I don't want the stock photo of the dude working on a computer with $1 million smile, or the gray-haired old grandparents sitting there, on their computer needing IT help or whatever. It's like, come on, just be real, be simple. Let people build something that people can trust you with. And I think that goes a long way. But I think a lot of times these businesses out there are they're trying to get that pop and sizzle. And I like what you've been saying from the beginning. It is a long-term game, not a short-term game. Yes, there's things you can do short-term that'll kind of prime the pump a little bit, but then you should be also building in that long-term game for the future way down the road.
Yeah, definitely. It's a marathon. It's not the 100 meters. Because we're all in this for the next 10, 20 years, however long until we sell the business. And it's all about having systematic marketing, consistent marketing. My business is built on, as you'd expect from a marketing person starting a marketing business, it's built on the very nature of it is systematic, consistent marketing, where, we've got a funnel, we're putting people in at the top of the funnel, we're building our audiences, and we're doing it all the time, and it's systematic and whatsoever. And whenever we need new clients, we just do a promotion. We just do some of the commercial stuff that we were talking about, and it's almost boring in that the results are so predictable. That's what makes it boring, and that's good. Marketing that bores you as the owner is a good thing, because it means that it is predictable, it delivers results. It's exactly the same for MSPs, and as you say, it's so simple, Jeff, to stand out in the MSP world. It's so simple. Things like, as you say, putting your photo on, telling your story. Why are you running your business? What's the story behind it? We started at the beginning. I told you my story, and everything I told you was true. But there were pivot moments in my life, and there were two or three others that I haven't talked about publicly yet. But pivot moments in my life where everything changed because of things that were happening in my life. You and I know that business owners, your business and your home life, they're the same thing. Because when business is awful, your family knows about it. When business is great, your family knows about it. They absolutely go together. So why not bring that into your marketing? Because if your clients have exactly the same thing, I know that everyone who's listening to this who is a business owner is emotionally up or down with the business, and it affects home life. So make that part of it. I'm a big fan of putting pictures of your family on there if it's appropriate. You and your staff, don't ever let your staff say, "Oh, we don't want to have photos of us on the website," or don't not put their photos on because you're scared that competitors will steal them. Competitors are going to steal them if they want them anyway, and your staff will go if they're going to go. It's the same with client testimonials. Get videos of your clients. In fact, if I can give a URL, there's and this is a British thing. But it's a service I offer in the UK. We don't do it outside the UK because it involves physically filming. But if you go to mspvideos.co.uk, mspvideos.co.uk, and you can see on there a whole bunch of sample videos. So this is a service I offer in the UK, and particularly if you go and look at, I think it's the Crosstech general one, because there's about 9 or 10 sample videos on there, and the one that's Crosstech is a guy's. So Crosstech is one of my tech clients, and we sent a video crew and sat down with one of his clients, and his client talked about how they I think they were crypto locked, something like that, £100,000, which is a lot of money, and they lost a lot of money, and then Crosstech came in and saved them and undid it, and they still lost the money, but they got their technology back. And it's the best video I've ever seen, because here's a guy who's running it's quite a famous games company, talking about how they were stupid, they didn't take the security properly, they got caught, and then Crosstech came in and saved them. And he's telling the story, and he chose to tell this story on camera. And it's like this, the second I saw that, I rang my client John, who runs Crosstech, and I'm like, get that on your website now. Homepage at the top. That's the money shot. That video is going to get you your next 10 clients. That video stays on there for 10 years. That's the best marketing tool you're ever going to have, because it's one of your clients choosing to talk about how stupid they were and how you saved them. It's amazing. So, you take something like that. The rest of John's website, which actually isn't too bad, it's a pretty good website. He's been working a lot on it. But the rest of his website almost doesn't matter, because if you can just get people to watch that 60-second video, bang, emotional engagement. So I would take that, and every MSP should have a video on their website at the top of the homepage, that kind of video where the clients are talking about you, not a dull one, but a really interesting one. What you can do is you can send that website to your local video people that are going to make a video for you, and you can say, I want a video like this, please. The other one that's good on there is IT Guys, which is a London-based company, and they have a niche. They work with sort of creative agencies, like advertising agencies, PR, that kind of thing. And they got 3 of their clients, and it's a 60-second video, which is interspersed with 3 of the clients just talking about how great they are. And again, that has got them clients, because people in that niche get sent to their website, they go and have a look, they watch that video. There's 3 companies just like their company that trust these guys. So what do they do next? They pick up the phone and they call them, or they fill in the form, or book a calendar, or whatever it is. But the point is, it makes them feel safe, and it's emotional stuff. There's no talk about technology at all. The technology is irrelevant. They're talking about service. They're talking about how nothing's too much trouble, and they're just talking about how they enjoy working with them. And that is really good emotional marketing.
That's good. I know we talked about before the show, and one of the revelations I came up with years ago was a lot of people, when and the reason I simplify things, I have to look at things from what I call a normal standpoint. In other words, if you're in technology and you're working in this industry, you are not normal.
Very true.
So if you look at it from a normal standpoint, and people, like you said, the common theme is, I'm not a computer person. And, that irritates a lot of people, myself included. But from that standpoint, you got to look at when something happens to a person, their computer breaks, whatever it's going to be, they're going to use a simple term to search for, kind of like what you're talking about earlier. And it's going to be, hey, my computer's broke, I need it repaired. So I'm going to type in computer repair. Maybe I put in my city and state or whatever to find a local person in that area. And so I think a lot of people try to get real fancy with the technology, and you made a great point. And it's so irritating to see, hey, get your cybersecurity taken care of. No normal knows what cybersecurity even means. They don't understand it. They'll never understand it.
They don't wake up in the morning and think, oh, yes, I must get my cybersecurity sorted out today. No, you're absolutely right. What they do, though, is they get scared. And they get scared because a friend of a friend got hacked, or something went wrong, or and that's the frustrating thing. It's like when someone gets burglarized. I lived in an area 20 years ago, a place called Nottingham in the UK, which you're quite likely to get burgled if you live there. And we were burgled, and we got an alarm and extra security, and so did our neighbors, because they knew we'd been burgled. So suddenly it was real to them. When the street, the next street got burgled, no one really cared. But when it was in our street and it was our place, it became more real. And I think it's exactly the same with cybersecurity, unfortunately.
That's a very good point. Yeah, I like to keep things as simple as possible, for sure, because it makes sense to the normals out there and what they're looking for and what they're trying to get out of. They have a problem and they want that problem fixed.
Yeah.
No matter what it is. And I think I love this, because to me, it's just simplified storytelling, edutainment, like you talked about, and just a lot of great points. So I know Zippo about marketing, and this kind of excites me, actually. And it's funny because we've gone over this debate too in the past, where we've taken the word MSP. When we named the show MSP Unplugged, I used to do a show called Computer Repair Podcast, and we kind of changed it up a little bit. And I kind of make fun of the whole MSP moniker. I have since the beginning. And the reason I do is because no person wakes up in the morning and goes, I think I'm going to search for a new MSP today. Because no normal knows even what an MSP is. And we often laugh sometimes, because managed services have been around since the beginning of time. And there was probably managed services, back where they were cleaning up camel dung. I don't know. But the point is, it's been around forever. This is nothing new. So again, you got to deal with things from a standpoint where people can understand what you're trying to talk about. So stop trying to be so fancy, everyone. I guess that's my bit of advice there, but be normal if you can. All right, let's take a quick break. And I'll tell you what, Paul, if you can come up with any lasting thoughts, anything else that you want to touch on, we'll go ahead and we'll head on out the door with that. But if you would like to support this show, I would encourage you to go over to patreon.com/MSP Unplugged. And what that does is get you into a secret Facebook group, private Facebook group, whatever they're calling them nowadays. I don't know. But it'll get you into a nice Facebook group where people are helpful and nobody is mean, and we don't allow bullies, because if we have those problems, we just kick them out. It's, there's no first, second, third chances. It's like, hey, yep, if you're mean, you're not helpful, you're done. And because we want a safe environment, no matter where you're at in your business, where you're starting off at, where you've been, there's always new things. I am 50 years old and I still learn new things every single day. And so with that being said, we have this Facebook group that we encourage people to become a part of. And you can do that by giving $1 a show. It's $4 or $5 a month, depending on how many shows we do. I only charge per every time that we actually do the podcast, so that in case we don't, something happens to me or whatever, we don't have this recurring revenue coming out all the time. It's something when we put content out there that we make that available. So again, I encourage you to go over to patreon.com/MSP Unplugged. And I want to thank you for the continued support of our Patreon supporters. Thank you for supporting the show. You make this show possible and make things happen. So we appreciate it. All right, Paul. So any other things? I mean, I feel like we've probably just touched the surface of marketing, and we could probably go into a whole series of marketing. I'm sure you have a lot of that stuff available through your MSP Marketing website. But is there any other things that you want to touch on in this show that people probably should know about to help them in their marketing efforts?
The only thing that, because you're right, I could do this for 10 hours, and in fact, if we do about another 5 hours, another 6 hours, I can wake my daughter up and just take her straight to school. So I'm happy to do that if you are. Let me tell you about some free resources that's available on my website, because it helps to answer the question which you asked earlier of what should I do, how should I do it, how should I get started. So the first thing is I have a book. The book's called Updating Servers Doesn't Grow Your Business. And it's a physical print book. We've got 2,000 copies sat in a warehouse in Chicago, Illinois, and they're waiting to go out. We have copies in the UK as well for anyone from the UK that's listening, or that's unlikely at this time of the day. But all you need to do is, if you don't mind, Jeff, if I can give my website address. So if you go on to Paul Green's MSPmarketing.com. So it's my name with an S, Paul Green's MSPmarketing.com. Right there on the homepage, there's a photo of the book, and you just fill in your details, and we'll physically post a copy of that book to you. There's no like upsells or anything silly like that. There's literally no cost. The reason we do it is starting a relationship. I said earlier on, the kind of marketing I do is exactly the same kind of marketing I recommend to my clients. So we will physically post you a book, and it starts a relationship. And obviously, you go into my email list. You can unsubscribe if you want to. The other thing to mention is we have a Facebook group as well, and mine's called MSP Marketing. So if you go into the Facebook app on your phone and just type in MSP Marketing at the top and go to groups, and it should be the top group. And I think we're something like 980 members, and it's all MSPs. We don't have vendors. We had a vendor purge a few years ago. So that's, I believe, is the biggest pure MSP marketing group on Facebook, and it's something that I'm in every day. And that's a great place to ask the questions of what should I be doing. We started the show by saying do 60 minutes a day. If I finish in, what would you do with that 60 minutes a day? And obviously, we talked about building audiences and building a relationship with them. If you do nothing else, focus on LinkedIn. And just building up your LinkedIn connections. In fact, there's 3 C's of LinkedIn that you can do. There's connect, there's content, and there's contact. So connect is go get more people. You can, on the free plan, I think it's a maximum of 20 people a day. So put in 18, 19, 20 connection requests a day. In fact, the golden secret with that is to find someone who's already got the connections you want, and connect to them. So there might be an Uber networker in your town or in your city who seems to know everyone. Connect to that person, and then go and friend request or connection request all of their connections. And there are automated tools that you can use to do this for you. There's one called Dux Soup, which is DUX-soup, as in soup that you drink, and that automates human behavior and does connections for you. So you've got connect, then you've got content, which is about putting content on daily, and then you've got contact, and you can drop people a message on LinkedIn. I don't think you should do that until you've been connected to them for a few weeks, but you can find varying opinions of that all across the internet. I think you do whatever works best for you. Me, we don't really do a lot of messaging on LinkedIn, but if I ran an MSP, I would pick up the phone and I would phone someone after a couple of weeks and say, hey, we're connected on LinkedIn. Just wanted to have a quick chat. And what you're looking to do is to gauge. In fact, this might be the exact question you ask them. You want to gauge how happy they are with their incumbent. So you could ask them this question on a scale of 1 to 10, where 1 is desperately unhappy and 10 is the happiest in the world. How would you rank your current MSP? And if they answer 10, 9, 8, there's no opportunity for you there for years. If they answer 7 or 6, there's an opportunity coming up. If they answer 5 or below, there's an opportunity now, because someone who only ranks their current MSP as as 5 or below is already desperately unhappy, and it's their way of saying that. So even if you ask just that one question of new people that you speak to, that instantly gives you so much information, because of course you can follow it up with the great open question of why did you give them that score, or what is it that made you give them that score, which then gets people opening up about the things that are unhappy. And remember, people leave MSPs because of the small things. Yes, they leave if you have a massive technology screw up, of course, but that's a very rare thing. They're much more likely to leave because they don't like the person that answers the phone anymore. They perceive that things take longer to fix. They never hear from you anymore. Actually, you're more proactive. This is the weird thing, isn't it? The more proactive you are and the less goes wrong, the less they think they need you. So you have to keep reminding them what it is that you've been doing. It's true. Yep. Or they just perceive that things are difficult. Things aren't as good as they used to be. Perhaps because you've grown, or maybe because they've grown. Sometimes companies leave their MSP because they've grown and they feel like they've outgrown the MSP because they didn't realize the MSP is growing at the same pace. So it's all those little things that you're looking for that will make someone leave your competitors.
Very good. Well, Paul, I definitely appreciate you coming out tonight in late there and sharing with us. And I'm glad, you could tell the Red Bull was kicking in because you just were going. That was awesome.
I'm so not sleeping tonight.
Well, I hope it wears off quickly. I could drink a cup of coffee and I could still go to sleep. So maybe I need to slow down on my work a little bit. I don't know.
Maybe.
Anyways, well, I appreciate you coming out. And if people want to, obviously we shared the website and we will have all those links in the show notes. But if people want to get in contact with you, what would be the best way to do that? Through your website, through your email?
Yeah. So you, if through the website, get a copy of my book. You can also email me. It's hello, HELLO at paulgreensmspmarketing.com, and it is me at the other end. So it may take me a couple of days, but I will reply to every email that I get.
Well, I appreciate it. Thank you very much for sharing with us today. It's been an awesome show.
Thank you for having me on, Jeff.
Oh, no problem. All right, come join us every Sunday at 7:30 p.m. Eastern. And watch live or hang out in the chat room over on youtube.com/MSP Unplugged. You can also subscribe, and I encourage you to do that, to our YouTube channel and your favorite podcasting app to never miss an episode. Hey, when you subscribe, it makes it automatic. I want to thank everyone for listening, and we'll see you next time on MSP Unplugged.